Okay, what do we think about what comes to our mind after 6 months of this monsoon revolution in Bangladesh? Some of the words which I picked up, random feelings, everything. Bangladesh, anti-India, anti-Hindu, extra constitutional government, collapsing economy, sliding into anarchy. Just consider the fact that there are train strikes, bank strikes, oil strikes, trader strikes, services disruption, garment factories not working, a whole lot of things. And when you look at Bangladesh today, it's a throwback to the 70s or the 60s in our own country, where some part of the country was always on strike. I mean, there was never a point in time in those days when, strikes were not one corner of your newspaper, or if not the center. In summary, what do you say about Bangladesh today? Well, if I summarize and I put the cart before the horse, it is a country with a troubled past, a chaotic present, and probably an uncertain future. We don't know what's going to evolve in Bangladesh the way it's going. But like I said, what is it there for India in this? It's our, closest neighbor, 4,000 plus kilometers of border, with this kind of a feeling coming from there. How does India tackle this problem? Because for the past 4 to 5 months, a lot of analysis has been done as to what about Bangladesh. I think we've done that. It's time to start looking at India's interests in Bangladesh rather than Bangladesh interests in the neighborhood. Madam, we've been waiting to hear you. All yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join this very, very, very good discussion. And thank you to CASA for organizing it. Gunner Shot is an excellent forum, and I've really been enjoying so many discussions with the Lieutenant General Saeed Atta Hasnain, and we've really carried a lot of issues forward. So, based on what has been said, let me carry the discussions a little forward also. Now, I think the first thing we have to recognize, and I must say here, that unless we are hard nosed about what is happening, we're not going to be able to get it right. It's not a question of being conciliatory, it's not a question of being magnanimous. I mean, all these are words, all these are just words that, yes, you must, the point is we have to understand why this is happening and what do the people who have done this want. So I think it is very important to first understand what is going on within Bangladesh, what is happening there, and then we have to understand how we deal with it. I fully agree with what General Said Atta Hassan has said, that the government of India has been very patient, they have been very restrained, and they have taken the best possible view that yes, we always deal with the government of the day, whether it is Myanmar, for example. There's a huge problem, as we know, in Myanmar, but we still deal with the Tatmadaw, we still deal with the junta, because on a day-to-day basis, these are problems that arise all the time. Somebody coming across the border, going across the border. It's the same with Bangladesh. We have to deal with the government of the day because on a daily basis, there is no other option. But that does not mean that we do not know what is going on. And that does not mean that we only wait and see that it is getting better, is it getting worse, etc. So let me first, in the first few minutes, focus on what is happening in Bangladesh. And I'm basing this on the views of the people of Bangladesh. I think here, please, let us understand that it is not only the views of the government of Bangladesh. It's an interim government. By definition, it's an interim government. So talking of 1 year or 2 years, that's not a definition of interim government. If you look at the constitution of Bangladesh, interim government or caretaker government has a life only of 90 days. And that has already been doubled. I mean, we've already crossed 180 days. We will cross it on the 5th of February, 2 days from now. So I think we have to see first what is happening within Bangladesh. Now, we have to first say, was this an orderly change of events? Was this a normal change of events? It was a military coup. It was a military coup backed. I'm not even talking of the external backers right now. I'm talking about the backers within Bangladesh, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. And I think General Atta Hassan was completely right to talk about the fears of radicalization, because, let us face it, the powers that want to be in Bangladesh today are the same powers that lost in 1971. You have the Jamaat-e-Islami, you have the Razakars, you have Pakistan, and you have them backed by the USA. So I think these are the losing side in 1971. They are trying to assert themselves here. I mean, I would say difference between Biden administration and Trump administration is certainly there. So I will not talk at all about the Trump administration. I'm talking only now of what has already happened. So I think that we have to look at it and see that if they are wanting to come back to power, what is it that they want? They want what they lost in 1971, which is a highly Islamized Bangladesh, and a Bangladesh that is highly connected with Pakistan, with only one objective, and that is an anti-Indian objective. Now, I'm saying this because I had seen the exactly same situation during the time that I was in Bangladesh between 2003 and 2006. There was the Begum Khalida Zia government as prime minister, and the Jamaat-e-Islami was a member of that alliance. So the Jamaat-e-Islami was in that government. And I saw exactly what they were doing as far as cooperation with Pakistan, cooperation with ISI, support to the Indian insurgent groups in Northeast, support to all the anti-Indian groupings from anywhere in the world who wanted to come and take shelter. And of course, we saw the Chittagong Arms Hall that was intended for the all dissident groups in India and maybe even in Nepal. And, we saw all this happening. And they want a repeat of that situation. Except that now the Jamaat-e-Islami wants it entirely on its own. Just the radicalized Islamist groups on one side. Even BNP has been excluded from this grouping. So BNP is the one now asking for early elections, and Jamaat-e-Islami backed Mohammed Yunus and the interim government is saying, "Oh, we'll look at it, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, and so on." Now, I think that is this acceptable to the people of Bangladesh? We are seeing more and more a feeling arising in Bangladesh that this interim regime is doing exactly what they are accusing Sheikh Hasina of doing. That means they're accusing her of no democracy, and there is no democracy now. The media is completely gagged. We do not know. It never comes in the media what is happening. They're accusing her of, enforced disappearances. There are enforced disappearances now. They're accusing her of gagging the media. The media is completely gagged now. And they're accusing her of there's no economic growth. There is completely no economic growth now. So I think that we have to see that is this sustainable? In my view, it is not sustainable. In addition to the fact that this government is completely unconstitutional, they have sworn themselves in on a constitution which does not allow for an interim government. And even if you assume they're saying that yes, the Supreme Court gave this verdict, there is no evidence of that verdict, no copy of it at all. And to say that, I think I've always maintained that this question of putting eggs in one basket is not a valid argument at all, because we closely work with Sheikh Hasina because she respected India's red lines on security. And because of I see the change between 2003, 2006, and what happened after Sheikh Hasina got elected in 2008 onwards. A complete change. We had peace in the Northeast for 15 years, which allowed the Northeast to be developed, to have, development objectives instead of only security concerns. So all this was happening for the mutual benefit of the people. The people of Bangladesh benefited enormously. They had 6 to 8% growth for 15 years, got them out of the LDC status. And that is what should continue now. Economic growth, I'm not talking of Sheikh Hasina. Economic growth and democracy means elections should be held, as the BNP says, within the next 6 to 8 months. Now, if this interim regime is not able to do it, just today there's an article in a very leading Bangladesh journal which has said, well, if this government cannot do it, if this government is only talking about reforms, they're not mandated to do reforms. No interim government is mandated to do reforms. Reforms can only be done by an elected government. So that task has to be left entirely to an elected government. Whether it is police reform, constitutional reforms, economic reforms, there is no way this government can do it. So talking about it is completely unnecessary, and it in fact distracts attention from the purposes of going ahead with maintaining law and order. There is no law and order in the Bangladesh economy today. This is again something that they accuse Sheikh Hasina of, but there is no law and order. There is no inquiry into how did the 1,000 policemen, how did they get killed? But they have given themselves indemnity. We don't even know, many people don't know, that this government, interim government regime, has given themselves indemnity from anything that happened before, including in the run-up to the violence. So I think that the newspaper, the media report that I saw today said, look, if this government cannot do it, then we need a new caretaker government who will take 90 days to organize the elections and bring in an elected government as soon as possible. I think in India's own interest, this is what is necessary. Because I agree that when Vikram Mishri, that was a wonderful gesture, very important gesture of Vikram Mishri's going there and asking them what's going on and saying that India is willing to talk to you. But he did describe the talks as frank, candid, and constructive, which means he spoke his mind. And according to newspaper reports, he said, we will deal substantively only with the elected government. And this is all, waiting. It's a wait and watch period. Now, if we are going to deal substantively only with an elected government, then it's in our interest that the elected government comes in as soon as possible. So that should be our aim right now, to see how quickly and how smoothly maintaining law and order and having the elections can go hand in hand. This government has not been able to maintain law and order. There's no way that they can be maintained anymore. The police is not there. The army has been given magistracy powers and police powers, but they're not exercising it, because when the chief of army staff was in the USA, he was told that anybody, taking wrong action will not be allowed to go for peacekeeping. He was there in the month of October before the elections took place. So let us be very free. Let us be frank among ourselves that I don't think the main reason why I say, in addition to what I've said just now, why it is increasingly difficult to deal with this government, that they have shown no interest in dealing with India. No interest at all. I mean, I have not seen a space of time of 6 months where this government has not made the slightest effort to come to India, to visit India, to understand what can be done between this interim regime and India, to understand Indians' concerns. The issue about the border that General Hassan talked about is very serious. These are all issues on which agreements exist between the governments of India and Bangladesh. Now, let us not talk, please, about Sheikh Hasina or not Sheikh Hasina. A government-to-government agreement remains as such. If government A wants to change that agreement, let them say so. Then we talk about it. But just saying that, Sheikh Hasina concluded all kinds of wrong agreements and we will not honor them, we want, a situation where there is mutual, of course, there is mutual benefit. You think 3,000 Bangladeshis coming to India for studying, you think 1.5 million Bangladeshis getting visas and coming for medical, for tourism, for pilgrimage, for business. I mean, this is all in the mutual interest. And Bangladesh's exports now crossing 1 billion, heading for 2 billion. These are all very important positive changes. So we would like these changes to continue. If this government, it seems, has not shown the slightest interest in dealing with these changes. They have cancelled the visit of the judiciary, which was scheduled to take place. For 6 months, they have cancelled the BSF meeting. I'm very glad it's now going to take place later this month. They didn't even come for the very ordinary kind of but very meaningful celebration of 150 years of the meteorological department, where it was existing. It came into being when India, Bangladesh, Pakistan were all under the British colonial rule. But we are celebrating an event. You can send 2 people to participate. They didn't come. And on the other hand, you see the grand revival of the strategy which I have seen at work between 2003, 2006, which is the Pakistan-Bangladesh cooperation, and talking now of military training, of putting major generals there, of the cargo ships which have brought in strong explosives with Cambodian marking, and the cargo ships from Pakistan which have brought in Jaish-e-Mohammed cadre, which have melted into the population, whether they're headed for the northeast or somewhere else, we don't know, but this is exactly what used to happen earlier. So what I see is that these security concerns cannot be brushed under the carpet. These security concerns are the exact concerns that Sheikh Hasina's government was very careful in looking at, while doing all the mutually beneficial issues like trade. And I'm not saying that all issues are solved. Of course, you need to talk on water resources. Of course, you need to talk on border management, but at least honor the agreements which are there. And I think that there is no indication of any interest in honoring these agreements. In fact, when the Turkish delegation was there in Bangladesh, I saw a report in the Bangladesh media which said that the Turkish delegation assured Bangladesh of replacing everything that India was giving to them. So obviously it was based on a request from the Bangladesh interim regime. So I think that since we have such a close integral relation with Bangladesh, 4,000 kilometers border, very porous border. We know the situation of minorities has been very, very serious. It is not something which India is saying. For the longest of time, the Bangladesh media, including very senior editors whom I know well, kept saying, oh, this is propaganda by the Indian media. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. And one strong visit by Foreign Secretary Mishri, the very next day, the government of Bangladesh said, oh, I'm sorry, actually there were about 80 incidents and, we've arrested some people. So they know it's happened. Blaming the Indian media is a fake narrative. And I think fake narratives don't help good relations. But look at the interest. The people of the minority community this time have taken a unique position, the first time in 53 years, that we are not going to leave Bangladesh. This is our country. We are citizens of this country. We want our rights. And they have given an 8-point demand to the government of Bangladesh, which has been totally ignored by the interim regime. It's not even been mentioned in the media or talked about. Very simple demand, but nobody seems to be interested in dealing with them. So I think that we have to realize 6 months is a long enough time. There is no scope for any more waiting and watching, for any more, magnanimous situation where no matter how bad the situation is, we still overlook it and so on. We have to really take a very hard-nosed look at the situation and do the necessary scenario buildings that we are looking at. I think the situation has been made much more serious by what is happening in Myanmar. The Arakan army has been able to win over the Myanmar army, and the entire border, of course, between Bangladesh and Myanmar is a short border of 300 kilometers or so. That's now manned by the Arakan army. There is no Myanmar army there. And even the India-Myanmar border, all the border in the Rakhine state and much of it in the Sagaing division also is manned by the Arakan army. So I think we have to be very, very careful about what it means for the situation on the border, what it means for the further illegal infiltration of Rohingyas into India. And these are very serious considerations that we have always been looking at. So I think that we have to look at a situation where the people of Bangladesh get what they want. They are the ones who are saying no democracy. They're not going to last for 2 years without democracy. I think there is no way. In fact, if you support this interim regime in encouraging them to stay for 2 years without democracy, we'll be getting the same complaints from the people as they were making with Sheikh Hasina. That we are sort of allowing them to not have elections, allowing them to have whatever they want, and allowing such a complete radicalization. Even women's football has now been banned in Bangladesh. As of last week, this was again one of the reports from the Bangladesh media. So I think that these are serious issues about what is it that this government wants. They have clearly said they want a khilafat. The special advisor to Muhammad Yunus, who is now actually an advisor in the government. He's been sworn in as an advisor in the government. He is defined by Muhammad Yunus himself as the mastermind behind the events. And in New York in September, Muhammad Yunus said that this did not happen on its own. This is a meticulously planned event. And here is the mastermind, Mahfouz Alam. And this is the same Mahfouz Alam who has said in his tweets, we want a khilafat, we want to have Sharia law, and we want to take over large parts of India. We want to take over West Bengal, we want to take over the Northeast. I mean, they're drawing new maps of India. So I think that there are some things which can be treated as non-serious, but there's some things which you have to take cognizance of. So I think the time has come to take cognizance of what is going on, to take cognizance of what the people of Bangladesh want. They are equally unhappy now. They're perhaps much more unhappy now because they feel that their hopes have been again disappointed. And many people have mentioned about the anti-Indian. Yes, there is a huge, vicious anti-India propaganda that is going on, and we should be doing our best to look at that as well, because I think even the people of Bangladesh realize that how many day-to-day needs, how many day-to-day interactions can happen only with India, and how India has what, even as we speak, we have sent 50,000 tons of rice, we have sent further consignments, and we're ready to do even more, much more, on a humanitarian basis, on a day-to-day basis. But we must immediately make sure that elections are held in a very short period of time, and that interim regime that has proved itself, first of all, unconstitutional and illegitimate, but has proved itself incapable of tackling the situation, can no longer be trusted to organize elections. I'll stop at this point and happily answer questions.
Thank you, madam. Thanks a lot for your intervention. I think you made some very, very important points. And the first point is we need to be hard-nosed to get it right. And the consolatory period is over. 6 months is a long time. It's twice the time of 90 days, which is given in their constitution. And I felt right from the first day they were unconstitutional, but you've given them 90 more days, which is quite a bit. All right. This is not only constitutional, it is highly illegal also. And when you look at it, they're in major problems with their tanker strike, with their, bank strikes, and their cleansing of universities. Today, the college students in Bangladesh are fighting with each other. So the situation is actually becoming worse. And my own view is if this goes down the line further, we are sliding into anarchy and things might go a little out of control. In fact, I won't say little, lot out of control. Yeah, uh, yeah. There's no trust in India, and this trust in India or lack of trust in India will only compound itself as things go along. Uh, Another important point, I think this is something which is critical for us to understand the Bangladesh which we are seeing is the Bangladesh which existed pre-71, which existed during Khalida Zia's time. And we need to deal with it in that fashion, right? And that means a lot of issue of security and how to deal with it. You brought out an important point of we should ensure that the election take place in time. And for a new caretaker government, this government interim government has lived its course. You spoke of a new caretaker government and how quickly we can get an elected government which is to be brought in. Uh, who will bring it in? Who will bring this new caretaker government? And do you see USA taking interest in it? Or do you see USA and India and maybe other countries, maybe even from ASEAN or wherever, putting this structure in place? Because I don't see any force within Bangladesh which is in a hurry to put a caretaker government in place. It has to be a counterforce. So, your views, madam.
No, well, I think first of all, one has to recognize that the Bangladesh army is the real source of stability and authority in Bangladesh. So that is the first thing. In fact, there was some talk in the media that General Bakar Zaman may be coming to India, and well, I hope he does because that will give a very good opportunity to discuss and to see what is happening. So I think I do agree with General Azhar Hussain that one has to have faith in the Bangladesh army. There are a lot of pressures. Islamization is rampant in the Bangladesh army, and the very fact that the Jamaat-e-Islami was able to operate the way it did through the Bangladesh army, points to the fact that there is a schism in the Bangladesh army. That's being talked about. That's being openly written about now. That is there. But I still think that the Bangladesh army under General Bakar Zaman is a source of stability authority. They played a very strong and positive role. There is also the president of Bangladesh, which is a very strong constitutional position. And we must all remember that actually one of the first things that this group and the unmanaged students group, so-called students group, because as we know, as I said, that this was neither a students uprising nor was it spontaneous, but those students groups still try to even topple the president. But by that time, already the dissatisfaction with the interim regime had set in, and there was no support for that. And the army said, no, we're not going to have it. The BNP said, no, the president is a constitutional authority and the president must be allowed to remain. So I think these are all matters which ultimately the people of Bangladesh within will decide. But I am pointing to the fact that the interim regime, the caretaker regime can only exist for 90 days. If it hasn't, it's not been able to do it. There's no question of, talking about reforms and this and that. Think about what else to do. This is something which is within Bangladesh. There is, I'm sure, a lot of thinking going on. What President Trump's government will do, I think we will know. All the people are getting confirmed and the hearings are going on, and a lot of discussion in State Department. We have had discussions already our external affairs minister was there for the inauguration, has already had bilateral meeting with the new American Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he has also earlier met the new National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. So I think that these are all matters which are certainly at the forefront of concern. I cannot say what is happening in all these discussions. I think one cannot at all try and speculate on that. But I do think that this situation of what is happening within Bangladesh is well known. The way it is deteriorating, the way the law and order is non-existent, the way the economy is tanking, jobs are going, people are using jobs, the certainty of travel is going, investment is not coming in. Looking at all this, investment is not coming in. Growth would certainly be only in the region of 1% or 2%. So I think that these are matters which are of great concern to the people of Bangladesh. So I'm very confident that there are mechanisms, there are ways that you can get a interim caretaker government to look at the 90-day period and have elections after that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, ma'am. I think what you said is absolutely on the spot. For those of you who are watching this podcast, I must say, about 10 days back, we had a discussion. I had a discussion with General Rajiv Narayanan, who served for 1 year, or rather, who did his staff college for 1 year in Bangladesh. He lived there, and he lived there with the troops, and had a lot of interaction. And he's kept in touch. And what Madam is saying is absolutely right. The Bangladesh army is still neither this way or that way. In fact, if there is anything, what is coming out, it is still seeks stability and a democratic way of doing things. And if one reads the interview of Wakar Zaman, which he gave with Pratamalo, a lot of meaning is there, and it comes out in that. And then the president of Bangladesh, we must remember, was appointed by Sheikh Hasina, and he's a Awami League man. And politically, his leaning is towards that, and he's raised a lot of constitutional issues. So both these things put together, and the fact that USA it will come out with its own, I wouldn't say with its own plan for this particular area and its views, and the fact that, as Madam said, our External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have discussed Bangladesh. Why this is important is it has found resonance within Bangladesh. Bangladesh people are talking as why are they talking about it? So there is some counter movement on, and we'll see how it goes. But like what she said, I think we need a new way of thinking in Bangladesh, and we need a new way of ruling in Bangladesh.